Welcome back to another episode of Adventures in Machine Learning. I'm one of your hosts, Michael Burke, and I do data engineering and machine learning at Databricks. Today, I'm joined by my co host.
Ben Wilson. I build checkboxes in React at Databricks.
Is that a fulfilling journey for you?
um, it's the weird thing. It's something new to learn, and I don't know it very well. And I have a colleague in the team who is exceptionally gifted at it, and it's really fun to learn from him. So it's a blast.
All right, good to know. Maybe I'll check out checkboxes at some point. Um, So today we are fortunate enough to actually not have a guest. We love guests through and through, but sometimes it's nice to just sort of take a step back and brainstorm together about what we're working on in our lives. And hopefully this will be insightful and valuable to you, the listener. Today we're going to be talking about mentoring, the concept of having someone help you out and also helping others out in a Socratic and typically sort of teaching capacity. But Ben, I'm curious, what has been your journey of having mentors through your very long career, and what is a mentor to you?
My very long career. Man,
Yeah, sorry.
I am about to turn 45, so yeah, it's been a
Woohoo.
while. Um, it's been different in the different industries that I've been in. Uh, as I've told you before, I was in the Navy straight out of high school, and mentorship in that is it's so crucial in order for you to figure out what is going on and to emulate somebody's behavior in order to and to have a guide for that emulation in order to be successful. So you're not going to get advanced in the military, or you're not going to be successful at your job and respected in whatever your profession is if you don't have somebody that you can kind of look at, talk to, uh, who's going to give you all the pro tips. Um, but it's not like a formalized process uh, like it is in certain companies that I've been in. But it's important. Um, but when I left the Navy and joined the civilian workforce, my first job had nobody that I would consider to be a mentor. It was very much competition focused, people wanting to do things for their own glory sort of thing. And it made me quit. Like I hated that place. Um, and then I went to another place which had like our team lead. It was the first sort of real engineering job I had. Um, but our team lead there was fantastic. And he would basically be the mentor for everybody on the team for, you know, operational quality, making sure that we're doing things the right way, that our yields were up, that we were basically making the company money. But he actually cared about everybody, and he would sit down on one-on-one sessions with everybody every week. And yeah, I remember his first question. He's every week was, "Are you still happy here?" And he would just want to know, like, how are you feeling about your job? What do you like? What do you hate? What do you see as problems around you? Sort of like a formalized series of questions, but they were all leading questions to dictate how the rest of that discussion was going to go. And it wasn't a quick, like 15-minute check-in. It was, you know, 1 to 4 hours. You would sit in a room with this guy, and we'd like write on the whiteboard and discuss things like ideas that we have, and he would take notes the whole time. And then you find out weeks later that some of the ideas that you came up with that you were discussing were things that the team started doing. And then as more changes happened, you realize, oh, that was because he was talking to this other person that was on the team, and they had these great ideas together. So as a mentor, he was just a great listener first and foremost, and was able to distill things that resonated with him and apply them to team behavior overall.
Okay.
And then I moved to another extremely large company that the concept of mentorship just didn't exist. It was highly structured, rigid, almost like a dictatorship. So all decisions were top down, and you could kind of tell that everybody was seen as almost like a machine, and nobody really talked with one another.
Did the
There
model
wasn't even a
work or
formal
no?
process. What's that?
Did the model work? The dictatorship?
They're a very profitable company. um, it it works due to the fact that everybody's terrified of making mistakes.
Hmm.
But when you make a mistake at that place, it's millions and millions and millions of dollars on the line. So stakes were higher, and it was just a different feel. I didn't thoroughly enjoy my time there. But since moving to like the software side, tech side, like doing data science work and working with teams where people actually talk to one another, and no one person knows everything that's going on. You can't have context on everything or even understand everything that your team might be working on. You now have to have teachers and students, effectively mentors and mentees, to learn how to best excel and build people who can become self-sufficient and learn anything.
Heard. So I guess on my side, I've been out of school for about 4 years now, but I've been privileged enough to have very smart people around me. And I think throughout, even in school and beyond, throughout that entire time, I've learned a lot from a lot of people and had like fairly formal mentorships here and there. Um, and I can honestly say that I would not be a tenth of where I am today without those people. And I think I deserve some credit, but
Oh, of course.
well, yeah, but every single time I think about it, I'm so humbled and so grateful that people would spend their time teaching me because, like, yes, I will learn, yes, I will work hard, um, but it's just sometimes a foreign concept to me that like uh, people actually will like enjoy spending time explaining stuff specifically to me. But to elaborate, after graduating, I worked in a small algorithmic hedge fund. I had a University of Pennsylvania professor working with me at that time. He did a great job of explaining how to approach statistical problems as well as how to actually learn the underlying statistics. And after that, I moved to Tubi, which is Fox's streaming service, and I had a couple really, really great mentors there. I all of them were my direct manager, and I was fortunate enough to have good direct managers. But I also had working relationships with other people in the organization and on my team, and they provided a bunch of really useful context. And one of the best cards that I've ever pulled is I pulled the intern card and basically talked to everybody that I thought was cool at the company. I was like, it's like, hello, my name is Michael. I would like to schedule a one-on-one. And I just asked them a bunch of dumb questions like, how did you get here? What do you have advice? Like all those open-ended, annoying questions. And I got some really amazing answers. And then moving to Databricks, Ben has been a massive force in sort of explaining how to navigate the world of Databricks and also the world of professional services. And so, yeah, to reiterate, I would not be close to where I am today without all those people. And so there's a lot of value in building these relationships. And it's also just fun. It makes the day-to-day less monotonous and gives you a bit more meaning. So
Yeah.
that's the mentor journey, I think, for myself.
Yeah. And for me being a mentee at Databricks has been interesting because I've done it in 2 different departments. And like my old mentor is effectively your director right now. And that guy's awesome. Just somebody that is really good at understanding humans. He's very insightful about how people behave and how to best navigate that in a way that is respectful, professional, constructive, and enabling. And those all sound like stupid buzzwords, but they're actually legitimate when you think about it. And then the number one most important thing is that enablement aspect, is when you can find, somebody who's got really great potential and sink a butt of your resources into that person in order to help them grow, because not everybody has to do it the way that some people do it, about like career advancement or professional advancement or personal advancement. Some people learn the hard way because they've worked at terrible companies that there's nobody there to kind of guide them. They make a lot of mistakes. They have to learn the hard way. But as a mentor, you can identify somebody who might go down that path and just steer them away from the obstacles and give them some insight into, here's how you might want to think about handling this problem or interacting with this person, to be so that you're not creating an enemy. You might solve the problem, but you might piss some people off. There's ways to do that there's ways to handle situations that somebody might not know how the most optimal way is, and you can give them that insight and see that they learned a very important lesson without having to learn it the hard way. Like, oh, I just screwed up, and now I've got this like hostile fellow colleague, and like it's going to be rough dealing with this person for a while. And if somebody gives you that insight ahead of time, you might not be friends with this person or friendly with them, but you have mutual respect, and you're not creating discomfort in the workplace. And then in like the personal journey of getting better at things, you can identify where somebody's gaps are, because you're self-assessing, like, where am I now versus where are they now? When I was at their position, what did I learn that was most important for me to learn, so I can save this person a bunch of time and effort, and then they can get even better at this thing that they really needed to know than I am right now at the same period of time. And then you could just see this person grow, and it's like, wow, this is so cool. Like, I don't know, I get a kick out of that, seeing somebody who's just like dunking on my own skills. But when I first started, like, met with them, I was like, oh, they need some help here. I don't know, it's like planting your garden and watching it grow. It's just cool to me.
Yeah. Before we get into the actual like logistics and motivation of mentorship, how about we chat about how you start, and both from a mentee perspective and a mentor perspective. And to put a little bit of flavor on it, I've recently in my career gotten to a point where I'm supposed to teach people and sort of mentor, and that comes often in the form of leading projects. So I'm put on as a senior resource, and then we have other people that are going to do a lot of the hands-on keyboard. And my job is to serve as sort of a brainstorming resource for them, and then also do some of the more technical or harder things. And uh, there's some people that I like working with, and some people that I want to help foster a bit more. And so let's start off with the mentor perspective. Let's say you identify someone in your organization or otherwise that you think has a lot of potential, and you would like to help promote, help them grow, just support them and help them avoid the mistakes that you might have run into. How would you kick that off?
It's probably for if we were to break down a ratio of the number of people that have approached me versus the number of people that I've approached, is probably 80-20. Um, and I have never in the history of my career ever accepted everybody who's asked for like, hey, can I talk to you once a week or once a month or something?
And just for context, Ben is insanely generous with his time. Like, what percent of your time when you were in the field would you give to sort of one-on-ones?
It was like 30 to 40%.
Yeah, good God.
So like 10 different people at a given time. But of that, like 80% of people that have asked, I kind of go through an assessment of that person, of just talking to them, talk to them for an hour or two, just to get an idea of, and the only thing that I'm trying to root out is why. Why does this person want to talk? And if I sniff out that they're doing, they think it's some sort of adjacency bonus, like, oh, if I'm the mentee of this person who's super senior, then I'll get promoted. And that's the worst possible reason to want to talk to somebody, because then it's not a productive engagement with that person. So I'll just sort of politely explain that I don't have time, because I don't have time for things that waste my time. I don't tell them that it's a waste of my time. I just, I'm honest. Like, I don't have time to meet this frequently. And usually people get the hint of like, oh, this guy's too busy. I'm not gonna push this. But if I talk with somebody and I find that there's no motivation, or they're just really good at hiding it, which is fine with me as well. But if they're genuine about, like, hey, I really want to learn these 14 things and I want to get better at these, and it's not just all technical stuff. Because if all you want to learn is like, oh, I want to learn like the best way to write code in this manner, it's like, just write some code then. Like, contribute to open source. You'll get that skill set. That's not what I'm here to mentor people about. That's what you get by working in a team. You'll learn all of that stuff. But if you want advice from somebody about how to navigate your way through personal growth and professional growth, and how to get to the end goal that they have set out for themselves, I'll consider talking with them on a frequent basis. And what we end up talking about for the people that approach me is tailored to who that person is. Like, what do they actually want to do? They want to be recognized as an expert in this part of our business. And it's not just for, I want more money. That comes with becoming an expert. So, don't use that as the forcing factor for why you want to do that. It's more of, I want to understand more. I want to build cool things, and I need these skills to do that. How should I get started, or what should I be focusing on? That's worth my time to help those people out. Other times it's, I want to get better at leading, or better at talking with customers, or better at convincing people of the right way of doing something by presenting data in a certain way, in the correct way, or, making things objective instead of subjective. I would tailor the sessions for that. Or like, hey, I've had people that I mentored that the only thing they wanted to know is, how do I do public speaking? Like,
Really?
yeah, done that with a number of people actually, that they have to memorize a presentation in order to get up in front of a group of people, like word for word. They'll spend days like running through something, memorizing it, until they can reiterate their speech just word for word. And then, I've sat in meeting rooms just listening to them give this talk, this 30-minute talk, and I'll ask them, like, okay, do it again, but switch around section 1 and 4 of like what you're talking about. And they can't do it because they memorized the entire thing from end to end. Like, and then I'll start working with them, like, learn how to riff, understand the material you're going to be talking about, and then just talk without a script, and then work them through that. Because people have asked me, like, how do you get up and talk on stage and stuff? Like, I never see any notes on your slides, or you don't have like a doc that has your talking points. Like, well, because I made the slides and I know what I want to talk about, so I'm just going to talk about it. I don't do any prep. It's just live, and I don't recommend that for everybody. But having the ability to not stick to a script is something that a lot of particularly technical people struggle with, because they get so overwhelmed at, like, oh, I'm standing on stage in front of these big screens. There's 2,000 people in the audience. A lot of people panic at that, and there's ways to get around that and make people feel more comfortable. So yeah, sometimes that's a goal, and I'll work with somebody on that because it's important for their, like, what their objectives are for their career.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. As you were talking, I was trying to Google the top fears in the US, and because I heard somewhere that public speaking was number one. And I
Really?
think it was fear of heights and then spiders and then something else. But I unfortunately couldn't find the stat to back up my thought. But yeah, public speaking can be pretty scary, if especially if you aren't comfortable with it and like don't do it a lot. The first time you go up in front of an audience, it can be somewhat nerve wracking. Um, and like it's interesting, people typically freeze, and
Yeah.
that's a tough thing to get out of once you're frozen.
Yeah, and they'll start shaking or sweating
Yeah.
profusely, and it's a natural reaction, I think, for
Mhm.
most people, and it's something that you learn how to overcome,
Right.
and you can only do that in the safety of talking to somebody who's good at that, and then they can just give you pointers and things to think about. And it's not the picture your audience naked. I think that's the dumbest thing. It's more like picture your audience as so glad that you're the one up there doing this and not them. And once you get that into your
Mhm.
head, you realize, like, I'm actually in control of this room, and I feel much more calm and comfortable, and I can just present what I'm here to talk about. Particularly if it's something you built or you worked on, like a team that built this thing, you are the one that knows about this, and you know, just chill out, realize,
Yeah.
and have fun. And yeah, it's amazing when you can get somebody from that point where if they are talking even in like a meeting room with a team, like 15, 20 people, and they get super nervous when they're called on, and then work with them for 6 months or so. And then they're the one standing up at the meeting 6 months from then, like running it and being the one who's engaging with people. And you're like, yeah, this is going to unlock you for what you want to do. You want to go to the management route. This is how you do that. Like one of the big things for that.
Interesting. Yeah, I was trying to think about how I get unstuck for public speaking, and I focus on communication. I just think about what can I do to make the people in the audience fully like enjoy and understand what I'm saying. And
Mhm.
stuttering and freezing up is not that. Like, it should
Right.
be eloquent. There should be flow. It should be concise yet logical yet thorough. Like, what's your strategy, or do you just never get nervous anymore?
It's been years since I got nervous talking in front of large groups of people.
Mm-mm.
Um, yeah, it, I used to get nervous in high school when I was doing stage productions. Um, and I don't know what it was. It was like I would get super nervous right before going on stage for the first scene that I was in for a play or a musical. But then right when I crossed the threshold into the lights, all of that instantly went away. And it was always like that for me.
Mm.
And then I started thinking about it more when I had to do like public speaking in the Navy, where I'd start, feeling the jitters and getting nervous and kind of like butterflies in the stomach, and then go out in front of a huge group of people and it would go away. And that analysis of that behavior, I started to realize, like, I can preempt that feeling by imagining myself already on stage and that calming effect. So I think I just do that now, but I've explained that to people in the past, like, hey, once you feel comfortable when you're in the groove, think about that feeling and about how, interesting it is to be up there doing that. And then now apply that an hour before. And once you do that, you're like, oh, I'm not nervous about this at all anymore.
Is it because it's game time and your mind sort of shuts off, or what? Why do you stop being nervous?
Yeah, it's like, hey, the show is on now. So
Yeah,
just got to get up here and do it.
yeah, like full
But
attention on the show. There's no extra brain space to be nervous.
yeah, there's no reason to be nervous because, like, I'm the one up there talking. Like, it's not like, oh, I have to compete against these three other people about who's going to be listened to. It's like, no, like, people are here to hear this from me, so I'm going to do them the courtesy of doing this properly for them.
Got it. Okay, so back to the agenda. We were talking about from the mentor perspective, how do you start? And you spoke about how when people approach you, you typically have a conversation with them to discuss what's your motivation. And you don't directly say this. What about the other 20% of people that you tap?
Those are people that I'm by nature, I'm an observer of people. I always have been. Uh, Even though it seems like I flap my mouth a lot and talk too much, particularly in groups. I I really enjoy moments where I'm not engaged for talking, just so I can watch people. Or when I'm talking one on one with somebody, I'm trying to really listen to what they're saying and really hear them, not just the words that they're saying, but try to analyze them as a human being. Um, and sometimes when I do that, I recognize traits in people that I need additional data. So I'll just ask them. I'll strike up a conversation with them and ask them about, hey, what was the most fun thing that you learned recently? Or, hey, I noticed that you're doing this thing. Why are you doing this? And if they answer that in a way that I'm like, this person's genuinely curious or just loves to learn, and like, there might not be really, really good technically at what they're doing, but there's a desire there that you can tell that somebody has, and this is something they're passionate about. And then I'll just ask them, like, hey, do you want some advice about this thing? Or I noticed these things that you were talking about. Is that something that interests you that you want to actually do? And I've actually never interacted with somebody that's like, no, I'm good. Usually people who are interested in a topic, if they perceive me as somebody who knows a lot about it, uh, they're always like, yeah, I'd love to talk more and strike up, like, get some sort of cadence going to discussions with them. And then they become, we have this like mentor mentee relationship because of that. That's why you and I talk, by the way. You didn't ask me. I was like,
I
hey
know.
man, you want to talk every once in a while? And that blossomed into like, hey, you know, you're now like contributing code to MLflow and working on major features. It's because I could detect in you like the desire to do that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What gave it away?
All of your blogs that you were writing, like when you first came on to the podcast, I was like, this dude's weird. Like, not a lot of people do this. And the people that do it, that just spam crap out on Medium, that are like analyzing white papers or things that people are doing, they're usually doing it for personal glory and gain, not because they want to learn themselves and they want to teach people. It's more like, yeah, you're doing this for clicks, to get some like ad revenue or something. And when you read through what they write, it's like, this is largely like copied from other people's stuff. It's always funny to me also when I see people that do that. I've gone to blog posts before. I'm like, hey, that's my code, or like that's from the docs, like directly. Like that's a funny variable name that I put in there. Or hey, that's my email address in the standard out response there. You just copied that from our docs. That's embarrassing. But yeah, when you have somebody who's just doing that for personal gain in the right way, like, hey, I'm trying to be smarter. I'm trying to understand the world around me. There's not a lot of people that do that. And that's why I was like, man, this guy's different. Okay.
That makes
That's
sense.
why.
Yeah, that blog post set was probably one of my most proud accomplishments. The context was I graduated school studying environmental science. It was a highly non-technical degree, and I minored in data science, but took sort of BS classes. And I felt pretty insecure about my abilities as a data scientist, even though I got hired as a data scientist. And I had really smart people around me. And so I worked Pacific hours. And so I'd wake up at 9. And for the first several hours of the day, I'd work on my own stuff. And that turned into me writing a blog post every week for I think I hit like 40 something, like 42 weeks. I was trying to do it for a year, but literally every week I did not miss. And I would break down an academic paper that's data science related and sort of explain it and use the Feynman technique of teaching to learn, and turned into some pretty good content. And
Mhm.
yeah, so then that's how this podcast started and everything. But good to know.
Yeah, that's the other thing that's another indicator for mentors seeking mentees is particularly in the tech space. I've found this doesn't really exist in my past in the physical engineering realm, where you don't identify somebody who doesn't have the degree that's required for that job and being like, let me take you under my wing and teach you about this stuff that could kill you if you don't know what it is. Like that level, like that background in history in like physical sciences is usually there to protect you from destroying something at a company or killing yourself or others. So it's very important to have that academic background, understanding chemistry, physics, math and stuff. But in the world of software, it doesn't really matter. It's logic. Can you figure things out? Can you learn?
Right.
If you're doing, certain stuff in the CS realm, it's a good idea to have a PhD in CS. You're doing integrated system design, or you're building like low-level frameworks. You need to understand how very complex things are built. But most people who are building software don't need that. So you can come from anywhere. And even if you have a CS degree from a reputable institution, the stuff that is most applicable to your day-to-day job is what you learned during your internships. You were taken under somebody's wing, you were forced to build stuff, and you learned through that process of trial and error, failure and success. So when somebody comes into a role that they don't have the opportunity to do that due to corporate structure, or you might be doing like what you do in the field, you build a lot of applied stuff for customers, which is using the stuff that engineering builds. But as I'm sure you can attest, it's slightly different development practices between using APIs versus building APIs. Would you agree?
Slightly.
A little different, right?
Incredibly.
So, but there's no mechanism really for, if you're on that applied side, to learn how the sausage is made. You can look at source code and kind of see what somebody built and understand it, but would you say that it's different looking at source code versus building source code?
Yeah, night and day. Like I can read anything, I can't write anything.
Right, and we're all the same way. Like,
Yeah.
show me like core parts of Spark infrastructure. I'm like, yeah, I can read all that code. I know how it works. But did I build it? No. Have I built stuff similar to that? Sure. And I know that stuff that I built, but I don't have context on all of the details and designs that went into building it, the stuff in Spark, like why it was built that way. And that process of learning the why is way more important than the what.
Yeah.
So because you don't have the ability to do that, if you're coming from that applied side and you want to learn like the core development process, it's not something you can just walk into and be like, hey, I'm going to file some PRs against master. Okay. Nobody's going to, like, you don't even have the ability to do that. Right. So you need somebody to guide you along that path and introduce you to that if you're interested in it. A lot of people say they're interested and then they see how that works and they're like, yeah, this isn't for me. But there's a few people that are like, this is exciting. It's really hard. And I know nothing about it, but I am willing to learn the hard way.
Right. Yeah, we've been hinting at it, but let's flip the coin a bit and talk about the mentee perspective. So, how would you go about, first of all, identifying someone who could be a good mentor, and then initiating that, let's say, bi-weekly or weekly cadence where They have your back. They will explore things with you, ask you Socratic questions, guide you. How do you even kick that off?
The same way that a mentor would, I think, which is read people. Like, study that person. Don't study what comes out of that person. And that's a huge thing to think about and to process, I think, for a lot of people, because the default reaction to somebody, um, if you're like a junior person, you're looking at like somebody who's 6 levels above you, and you look at what they've built, and you're like, whoa, this person invented these technologies or created this amazing package or thought this whole thing up. If all you're looking at is what they've done and not who they are, you could be signing yourself up for a short-lived, not exactly useful relationship with somebody who's very smart and very good at what they do, but not everybody's a teacher or is interested in doing that. Even if they're forced to do that, which some are, that mentee might be like, yeah, it was cool, you know, hearing about what they've done. And I asked them a bunch of questions about what they built, but you don't really learn anything. It's like the difference between interviewing somebody for a biography versus reading that biography. That's like the big difference, I think. If you're the one talking to them and understanding and asking questions and hearing all of the anecdotal stories that go along with the main text of what would be in a biography, very different than being the outside observer.
Yeah, seeing the synthesized text versus going through the process of synthesizing text.
Yeah, you get to know somebody, and learn from them that way. So, like, the observing aspect, making sure that that person that you're potentially going to be asking to give up some of their free time to work with you, you have to be very careful about that. Very intentional. Like, is this person, do they extol all the virtues that I value? Like, if you're somebody who's like, hey, I want to mentor people someday, and I want to, pass on what I've learned, and I also want to get good at my job or better at corporate politics, or whatever it may be that you're interested in getting really good at, does that person actually display those qualities? Are they a good teacher? Are they a nice person? Are they helpful? Do they have other people's backs? Because that's all the stuff that you need in a mentor.
Right. There's a converse side of that, though, which is how do you, quote unquote, attract a mentor? And that's just a weird word to use there. But how do you it's the correct word. How do you demonstrate that you are a good use of their time? So, what are your thoughts on that?
So, fun fact, at our company, management actually identifies people and they put them into a formalized program where you get a kind of a hat draw of a pool of people that are considered, that have been selected as really good mentors, because management knows how they deal with people in their team and how they approach their job, and they're just considered to be like really skilled on all aspects of the job. And then they also identify mentees of people that are like, hey, we want this person to move into this new role, and having them talk to somebody who's been doing that role for 6, 7, 8 years is beneficial for the company and for both people, because the experienced person is going to learn from a new set of eyes on the same problem that they're working on, and the new set of eyes person is going to learn from somebody with a lot of experience and save them from making mistakes. So that the attracting mentors can be formalized in an organization. It wasn't like that in the field, though, at Databricks. It wasn't as formal as like engineering management does right now. It was more discreet. It was like within the organization, your director, my old director, just I like would contact the mentor and say, hey, there's a couple people that I think are sort of rising stars. I want to pair them up with you. What do you think? And I think really good managers do stuff like that. They facilitate that. But if you have no governance of anything like that at the corporate level or in your organizational level, it's still entirely possible. And you know, starting that process as a mentee to go and talk to a mentor and ask them if they have that spare time and that have a desire to work with you is, I think it can be daunting for some people, but if you never ask, the answer is always no. Make them tell you no. Sort of the guiding principle of my life. Make them say no. But if you never ask, you're never going to get a yes.
That makes a lot of sense. I could not agree more. And to sort of say some anecdotes from my perspective, the thing that I have always tried to lead with is energy and passion and being unapologetically me. And often that's like really curious, really just, there's a lot of drive behind my persona to learn what exactly is going on and be able to build stuff. I love synthesizing and looking at nothing, looking at it a week later and have something be there and be somewhat at least responsible for it. And there have been times when I that personality did not jive with my superior, and that was okay. And like I pulled the junior card and like got kind of pissed. I was like, why am I not learning this? Like, explain this to me. Let's go. And they just either got awkward or they just like ducked the question or they actually got angry. And it's important to know that as long as you're putting out strong signals on what you believe and what you feel, it'll somewhat attract the right people. It'll also alienate some people. Um, there was a I so remember when you said I was weird? I don't think you know the half of it. But one of the other weird things that I've done in my life is one of my favorite things to do as a kid was play Xbox and listen to TED Talks and audiobooks because I had just enough of my brain to work on the problem while being like distracted by having the Knicks smack the actually not the Knicks, the Sixers smack the Knicks in NBA 2K. And one of the things that I recall learning from Grant Cardone, who's this like douchebag salesman, he has like a big brand on YouTube, or at least did. Um, he said one of the important traits of a salesman is getting your sales target to hate you. And it was an exaggeration, but there's some truth to that in that you want to put out strong enough signals so that there are people that like strongly disagree with what you're saying. And when I was writing those blogs, the first hate comment that I got, I was so excited because I knew I was saying something that was important, at least somewhat controversial, and I was right. And like it's ideal to be right in those scenarios, but at least you are giving out strong enough signals so that you'll have followers, and you'll also have haters. So tread carefully with that advice, but it's served me really, really, really well, and it's attracted the right people in my life.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Uh, I think it's been a long time since I cared about what negative-minded people thought about me. Um, like I know loads of them exist, and I've witnessed it. I knew of it when I was in the field, you know, at Databricks. You know, work on a team with a couple of people on some project. I'm like, yeah, that dude hates me, like hates me with every fiber of his being, but we're still gonna get the job done. I don't care if they hate me. Um, we're here to work together and come up with a solution here. And at the end of this, maybe we never work together again, or hopefully this person can move on from whatever it is internally that they find so repulsive.
Right.
But I wouldn't sit there and be like, well, I need to change because I need to please everybody around me. Nobody respects that. Uh, Being true to yourself, and I mean, you should read the room, but
Yes.
it's about, like, if you're in a situation where go into a room of 10 people, 8 people hate you, 2 people can kind of deal with you. Maybe there's just 2 really nice people in there, uh, and you should probably adapt to whatever it is that, like, maybe ask some questions about, like, what do you hate about what I do, and then listen and work on that. But if you go into a room of 10 people and 9 people are super cool with you and think that you're really good at what you're doing, and one person hates you and thinks you're an idiot, that's fine. Move on. You're never going to convince that person, no matter what you do. Uh, they probably have something in their head that's, you know, preventing them from recognizing, you know, anything that you bring to the table, or maybe you remind them of somebody that used to beat them up on the playground as a kid. Who knows? But you're never going to win that person over, so it's not
Yeah.
even worth the effort.
Yeah. Do not underestimate human bias and how it can influence judgment.
Yeah. And a pro tip on that: if you're a mentee with a mentor, or vice versa, and you get wind of that sort of feel that's coming in, move on. Like, bail out of that. I've been in that situation where I'm like, hang on a second. I think this person just really, like, the questions that they ask me are very challenging, not like complex, but like challenging things that I've done or things that I work on, and very critical. And I'll ask, like, what would you do differently, or how do you how do you really think about this particular solution? And if I ask a question like that and I get a legitimately good answer back, usually my response is, that's awesome, thanks for that. I'm going to actually go and fix that, or I'm going to, change whatever that is, because this is a great idea. But the other 99% of the time where I've actually had that interaction with somebody, they don't have anything. They're like, I don't know, but I wouldn't have done it that way. So why bring it up? Like, if you don't have anything constructive to say about your ideas that you think are so great, that are better than what me and the team came up with, why do you even open your mouth? Is this just personal? And if it is, we're done here.
Yeah. So, how would you politically bail from that situation?
Uh, when I encounter people like that, I'm not political at all. I'm very blunt and flat out, frankly, rude. Because I'll tell them, like, what I think about that. I'll press on them to, like, what is it that you have a problem with here, and why? And if this is something that you think you can do better, uh, because you have all of these ideas, but you're not going to be constructive and work with the team or work with me on any of this, uh, why are you like this? And why did you even bring this up if you're not going to do anything, like provide any evidence of this? Subjectivity is something that really just irks me. Um, when somebody just says, oh, I don't like it because I don't like it, or I think it's stupid because I think it's stupid. That's an opinion, and it has no merit in my mind. So if you don't have an alternative to present in an engagement with another human being, if you have a problem with what's going on, it just shows how disrespectful you are as a person if you can't provide an alternative to something, because you didn't spend the time thinking this through. You're just spouting bullshit from your mouth that makes no sense. So I'm like, not worth my time. I just distance myself from people like that.
Right. Yeah. And Ben and I were talking about this earlier. If you don't have the political cachet to say you're an idiot, goodbye, a really good way to redirect is just start getting busy. Start saying, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I have to reschedule our meeting," or "Can we cancel this week because I have too much work?" And then slowly distance, which is probably a better route for at least more junior mentees, at least.
Yeah, I mean, if your mentor is doing that and they're super senior, it's not going to work well for you if you burn that bridge and then throw hundreds of gallons of gasoline on that bridge. You'd probably be forced out of the company, doing something like that. So if you're super junior and that power dynamic is not in your favor, honesty is not the best process usually. Um, that doesn't mean be dishonest and say, "Oh, I'm really busy," but actually you're going to spend that 2 hours of scheduled time, watching YouTube videos or something. Don't do that. Actually get busy on something constructive that you could use, that's a better use of your time than sitting in that discussion with somebody who's toxic. But if you're a mentor and you have a toxic mentee, words of the wise to mentees out there, depending on the political clout of your mentor, you might be out of a job in a short period of time. Because that's not something that person is going to just silently accept. Be like, hey, this person, like, I don't actually trust this person with holding the reins of this company. If this is the way that they interact with somebody that they're supposed to be learning from, or that they express the desire to learn from this person, and they're being a complete asshole in these interactions, how are they going to be with their fellow team members?
Right.
How are they going to be with customers? So it might be like, hey, human resources might get involved to talk about how to improve behavioral patterns. And
Right.
you might get put on some sort of improvement program, which is not a bad thing, if you grow through it.
Right.
So yeah, it's a tightrope you need to walk, and you need to understand that dynamic.
Cool. So we did sort of a little crash course in what is a mentor, how to find a mentor, how to start mentoring, both from the mentor and mentee perspective, and then also how to bail. Any other high level thoughts or tips or tricks that you could think of? Because obviously we could deep dive into any one of these sections for multiple episodes. But anything else that comes to mind that you think is high ROI to say?
Yeah, the big thing with mentors, at least the way that I think about it, is the engagement that you have with a mentee is not a one-way street of, hey, this person's here to learn from me, I know everything. I've never encountered that personally. I've never been in a mentor mentee relationship where I'm like, I got all the answers, I'm just dispensing pearls of wisdom before swine. It is always like, this person has a ton of stuff to teach me, even if it's just, if the discrepancy between seniority and junior and the level of juniorness of that person is extreme, I still have the ability to almost see perspectives from a different generation. Like, how does this person approach these sorts of problems in order to learn, so that I can better engage with other people of a similar level of experience throughout an organization? So I'm teaching myself through the act of interacting with this person. So I actually feel it's way more valuable for me about what I get from a mentee than what I'm giving as a mentor. It's just how I see it. And if it's closer to like a peer-to-peer mentor-mentee, where you're doing the same job, but one person's just been doing it for longer, there's so much you gain from that, on both sides. And good mentors will approach that relationship in that way of like, hey, I'm here to learn too. We might be, forced to have this one-on-one conversation, but I might be giving advice, but I'm also asking questions, or like, how do you feel about that? Or what are your thoughts on this? Because I actually want to hear the response. Or like, hey, how's it going? And I want to read that person when I ask that question. Like, what did we do when we first jumped on this call today? Or asking about how is it with, this other person on the team reviewing your code? Because I want to hear and see, we have our video on, because I'm trying to read, like, is he just telling me this, or does he really believe this? And I could see like, oh, he's really digging the fact that he's working with this other person and learning so much. And I instantly know, like, okay, we're on the right path here.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, treating it as a two-way street is really important. And one piece of advice from me, which I think is very related, is do it with people that you like spending time with. Like sometimes it's just not that deep. Like if you vibe with someone, maybe have a one-on-one with them. If you don't. It's really that simple. Um, and oftentimes, like you can learn a lot from very formal engagements like this. But worst case scenario, if you guys are buddies, like you just shooting the shit together, talking about cool stuff, even if nothing technical or even non-technical comes up, if it's just a good energy in the room, it's worth time.
Yes.
Cool. Any other closing thoughts?
No, I think that's good for this part of the discussion.
Yeah, there are like 700 offshoots, but we'll save those for a rainy day. Cool.
Yeah, maybe one day we'll talk about specifically tech mentorship, about like what you're going through, like how that transition. We mentioned it a little bit on the podcast about like that applied, software development, building tools with things that other people have built, and then that like having a process to actually learn how to build the tools themselves, and what is required. Like what did you need to know from somebody else in order to get down that path? And I think that would be super useful for perspective for the audience. Just like hear that.
Yeah, and useful for me. So yeah, let's do it. Cool. So today we went through mentorship, specifically what, how, when, why. And from the mentoring side, make sure your potential mentee has the right motivations. It's super important that they're not doing it for just personal gain from a promotions perspective. It should be about actually learning and connecting. And then on the mentee perspective, demonstrate you're doing it for the right reasons. So the converse of that, make sure that you're actually putting in the work. And then from a general perspective, it's important for both the mentor and the mentee to actually study the person and not just the results of the person. And then if you're an organization, you can create formal processes for mentorship within your systems. Anything else?
It's a good summary.
Cool. Well, until next time, it's been Michael Berg and my co-host,
Ben Wilson.
And have a good day, everyone.
We will catch you next time.